I'm Peter with Ericom Security by Cradlepoint, and this is the Enlighten series. Over 2023, banks, financial institutions, credit unions, and their service providers have been the target of numerous breaches. Earlier in the year, there was the MOVEit, the file transfer vulnerability that impacted a number of credit unions, and more recently, the Citrix Bleed, a CVE impacting around 60 or so credit unions. So this time, it's not really getting into those specific 60 credit unions, but more about how isolation can help financial institutions. Sometimes it's hard to spell and write at the same time. All right, so how can isolation help financial institutions? Well, let's take a look. Let's put our people over here like we normally do. And they got a browser. They could be in the office, remote, at home, in a branch, wherever. Now over here, we got our applications and data. Want to protect that, and we want to protect that. So we have an individual here, and they're clicking on links or getting emails, doing some outbound browsing. Now, generally, in a lot of organizations, this outbound browsing will be checked with a secure web gateway. And within the secure web gateway, there is a list of good or allowed sites and bad or not allowed sites. And you can probably guess the categories of each. Now, generally, those are the two options. You know, good, you can go; bad, you get blocked. But there's actually a third option with Ericom's Secure Web Gateway, and that would be to isolate. So unknown, risky. I mean, you can certainly block them if they're known, but if they're unknown, you want to isolate those sessions. And isolation it's an isolated cloud container, and it literally creates an air gap between the user and the applications itself. Because secure web gateways also will determine categorization also based on signatures. So they have a lot of signatures in there, the known threats, the known vulnerabilities. There's a signature list in there. If it matches the signature, either, block it, what have you. Now, if there's a zero-day attack, however, and 0 days are like one of the most popular things these days, but if there's a 0-day attack and there's no signature in there, then it's going to pass through. It's going to make it. And you really want a zero trust architecture in financial institutions. Heck, a lot of organizations are moving toward zero trust. So without the signature, then there's the potential of infection, network breach, what have you. And so email comes in. The email is potentially a phishing email. Person is in a hurry and clicks the link. Because there's no signature in there, if there wasn't isolation, they'd head to the site and potentially then enter their credentials, and who knows what happens after that. It's generally bad stuff. In this instance, however, because it's unknown, it's a potential phishing site, we put them in isolation, and this would be called remote browser isolation, RBI. What we can do with that phishing site is simply make the whole site read-only. And so you can't even enter your credentials in that instance. We have customers actually where because the executives are targeted a lot with spear phishing, all of their browsing activity goes into isolation just to protect the entire organization. So, yeah, and the thing about this is that then, these unknown web pages are then loaded, executed here in this isolated container. There's a virtual browser, VIRTU, a virtual browser in here. And so things like JavaScript, so malicious scripts, active content, things like that are executed here in the isolated cloud container rather than locally on the machine. And so any of that malicious content that's here never makes it to the machine. And only clean, rendered, safe content is then delivered to the end user's browser, and they can interact as if they were directly connected to the application. The user experience is exactly the same as it would be without all of this protection in the middle. So we got that end protected, the data protection, the user's credentials, and the controls in here, especially read-only. Now, when we move over to the application side, in this instance, we're going to flip RBI and call that web application isolation. Now, what do we use web application isolation for? So this person, we kind of generally assumed that it's either an employee, either working from home, in the office, et cetera, but if this individual's a contractor, third party, I'm going to put third party over here too to balance out the third party drawing, or just folks that need access to corporate applications, so corp, private apps, software as a service, all of the stuff that's protected behind the DMZ, if you will. They may need access to certain pieces of information over here. Now, you might want to give them a VPN. Now, a VPN just gives them network access. It doesn't necessarily protect against malicious content. Not to mention, VPNs might allow them to, navigate around, lateral move around in the network. Plus, this is, a client, and you got to manage it, and these contractor devices will be client list. You won't be able to manage them. They're unmanaged devices. You don't know what's on them, but you still need to let them have access to certain content over here. And so what we do is, instead of allowing these folks direct access, what we do is we isolate the web application. So rather than isolating the browser, we isolate the web application here. It still allows the unmanaged client-less device to interact with the data that they need access to. You can be very strict and have a lot of controls of what they can gain access to. So you can, copy paste the clipboard rules. We got data loss prevention. So looking for certain pieces of data that shouldn't be downloaded, that shouldn't be viewed. We have CDR, content disarm and reconstruct. So say if there is, now here's that third party ad server over here, serving up malicious ads, including 0 days ransomware and take your pick. Any of this stuff too with the content disarm and reconstruct just gets dissolved, if you will, here in the isolated cloud container. So DLP, CDR, copy paste. So there's a lot of control you can have, within here. Over on this side too, you can actually do RBI for virtual meeting isolation. So your collaboration tools, your Zoom, your WebEx, your Teams, even, chat messengers can go through this isolated container and be protected on both ends. So in this way, you're isolating the web application. If there's malware or other funny stuff on this device, it won't impact the application or the data. You have a lot of control over the information that goes back and forth. And if there even is, any of these bad third-party ad servers, again, cleaned up in here. So how RBI over on this side, you protect the user's data, credentials, all that interaction. And over here, WAI, web application isolation, protects your applications and data. And even if this guy is malicious and wants to, start doing all the funny stuff over here, we even actually have a white paper on how WAI can combat against the OWASP top 10. Pretty cool. And what this does now, it is complete zero trust. We don't trust that. We're not going to trust any of this stuff on the back end because of the potential of 0 days. So this isolation is true zero trust. Now, of course, if you'd like to learn more about Ericom security by Cradlepoint, you can certainly visit us at ericom.com. I'm Peter. Hey, thanks for watching. If you like this sort of content, please share it, like it, certainly subscribe if you so desire. And I hope you can join us for more of the Ericom Enlightened series. Check them out right here. Thanks for watching.